All right, so here's our chicken. We have one whole frying chicken here, okay? I'm going to kind of run through the parts. We talked about this with poultry just a little bit, so you kind of understand, you know, what the parts of the chicken are, where sort of the meat comes from, that kind of stuff. So this whole chicken, if it were standing up, looking at you, it would be facing this direction. These would be the wings, right? These are like the sort of like the arms. Think of them like your arms. And then there's legs down here, and then the predominance of the meat is here on the breast. Okay. They do remove the head, so but you can still see some of the neck right here where that head was cut off right here. And they do remove obviously all the tail feathers, but you always have that little part of that tail sticking out of there. And then of course all the guts and things, the gizzards and the livers and all that stuff has been cleaned out and removed as well. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we're going to debone this. We're going to start by doing the breasts, and then we're going to take off the legs, and then we're going to debone the legs, and I'm going to just show you kind of some of the parts. There's a number of ways to go about doing this depending on what your end result is. Remember we talked about disjointing, where you would just cut it in half, and then you'd cut it in quarters, and then eighths if you want to do that, like if you're going to do fried chicken or something like that. For this, we're trying to get to just the bones for our stock, and then we're going to use the meat for something else. So we're actually going to take the meat off the bones for the most part, and then we'll just have that carcass left over. So first you want to locate the breastbone. Breastbone, you'll feel it. It's right here. There's some, hear that? It's like a piece of cartilage. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go on either side of that, like that. So we're going to take our boning knife, and we're going to just kind of try to find it, and then just make a nice little slice in here till we feel like we're right on that breastbone. And this boning knife, make sure your boning knives are sharp. When we start tomorrow, you might want to bring them up here, whichever one you get. Put them on the sharpener just a little bit, just to make sure you got a nice edge on there. Now all I'm doing is I'm going to just make these little shallow slicing cuts, and all I'm trying to do is just release this from that center breastbone. And I'm just, as I'm doing this, I'm just taking my fingers and I'm just moving it kind of away from there. So you can see, if you're looking at it like this, you can see that breastbone is right here. Okay. Now as I get towards the back here, I'm going to run into this joint right here. This is kind of where, like on you, where your shoulder meets your kind of your collarbone. Okay. So we're gonna actually pop that out of socket, just like you know, just like dislocating your shoulder. We're going to kind of do that to the chicken, which is going to be a lot of fun, needless to say. Okay. I'm going to take it. I got one little pin bone here that I'm going to try to remove really quick. I kind of missed that. There we go. I get right down here, and I'll see it in just a second. There's a ball and socket joint right there. Okay. All you want to do is take your tip of your knife, put it in there, just pop it open. Okay. Once that's released, the rest of this should come right off. Just a couple little shallow cuts, and then we're going to need to cut through this skin right about here. Okay, so there's that one deboned breast. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, just like this. Okay, just all you do now is you just go. When you guys do this, that's why there's going to need to be two in a group or by yourself, because there's only two halves of the chicken. So this is actually something that the seniors are getting ready to do this next week. If they're doing, the ones that are doing their certification have to debone the chicken. Again, I've got that little bone right there. Just pull that out of there. There's a little, like, almost like a pin bone right there in the back of that breast. Okay, again, you'll see I'm getting to that ball and socket joint right down here at the back. Once it's exposed, take your knife in and then just twist. And I'm going to release the rest of this. Okay. And then right here, when you're looking at this side of it, what you're trying to do is you're trying to cut through the skin, but you want to leave the skin intact on that leg. So it's almost like if you grab it and you pinch it like this, you can do this, and that will help to release that. And there's the other breast. So here's the two breasts. Now, so what we've got left here, okay, are the two legs and thighs right here. Okay, this was the breastbone. This is where we just pulled the breast and the wing off. So here's the kind of the inside where You know, obviously on you, this would be your center breastbone. Here's the rib cage right here. Now, what we're going to do to take these legs off, just like the shoulder, just like that wing area, it's a ball and socket joint where the top of the thigh meets the pelvis. And if you look at it, you almost see it right here. Now, sometimes what you'll do is, if you're disjointing the chicken, you'll just be cutting it in half and quartering it and leaving all that backbone intact. For our purposes, we're going to disjoint or dislocate that that thigh bone from the pelvis or pelvic area, and then slice through it at kind of an angle, because you don't want to lose all the meat. There's meat underneath this. If you cut straight down, you're going to lose, see all this extra meat that's here. Okay, so there's the thigh. Okay, we've seen like chicken legs before, thigh, leg. Same thing here. Okay, and then all you got to do is just kind of twist. You'll see it just pops right out just like that. And then cut it off. Okay, so now what we've got left is basically our carcass. This is chicken carcass. So we've got some meat on here. We're not going to concern ourselves with it. There's a couple little pockets of meat here. There's obviously some skin. We don't need to remove all the skin. If you want your stock a little bit leaner, you can pull this part off. This is just a big chunk of fat. Okay, we don't really need that. But here, what you want to do, because remember, this is a timing thing when we make stock. You want to make sure that you cut these bones down just a little bit, because you don't put this whole thing in there, it's going to take longer to impart flavor. So usually I try to separate it into a couple of pieces, cut through the ribs. You have this breastbone right here. Let's see if I can split it right there. Sometimes you just kind of twist it. There, it comes apart. So you got that piece. And then here's your backbone area. Keep in mind what you want to look for here. See, there's a little piece of liver left in there. Get that out of there, because that's gonna discolor your stock, and it's not necessarily good flavor for stock. Chicken livers are very good, but kind of don't want that. So if you can get it out of there, get it out of there. A little bit isn't going to hurt it, but we try to clean out some of that if we see it. Okay. And now this part here, you can just cut this into some pieces. Sometimes you're going to need to have your chef's knife, possibly, if you can't split it with the boning knife. I was able to do it. My knife's pretty good shape. So just a couple, 2-3 pieces. So set those in there. Now, we're going to go to our breasts again. I'm going to show you one quick thing as far as the breast meat goes. If you look on the inside of this, the chicken breast is there, but see this kind of flat thing that's right here? It's on both of these. This is called the chicken tender. So this is the original, like, where chicken tenders, you know, kind of came about. Because this piece, if you go to cook this whole thing, it's kind of loose. It kind of falls out anyway. And so usually you can almost pull it out, but I'll just cut it like that. And so we have, see that nice chicken tender? If I was to, you know, bread it and deep fry it, that's chicken fingers, basically, like real chicken fingers. Not like the stuff you get, you know, from some places where it's just chopped and formed. These are actual chicken. You just flour that, or, you know, egg wash it or bread it or whatever, deep fry it, and those are your nice chicken fingers. So that's one cut that's in there. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to do what's called an airline breast. Okay, which is basically you leave the skin on. We are going to separate the wing at this second joint right here, and see, it's just a little ball and socket. Think of it like your elbow. Okay, it's your elbow. That's where I just cut right through the elbow joint. Okay, now this, can we, you know, deep fry these and make wings? Absolutely. This part here, there's not much meat in that. Usually I use that for the stock because it's got a lot of nice connective tissue. So I'm going to set that here. I'm going to throw that one in there. Now right here, all we need to do with this is we're going to do what's called Frenching. So Frenching is when you clean the bone. Okay, you take and just make an incision in your knife right down to the bone, right until you feel that bone there, and do it all the way around this drumette. Okay. Then you're going to take the back of your knife and sort of scrape away the meat. Try to make it nice and clean. Get it all the way to the top. Okay. Once that's done, we're going to take our chef's knife because you need a stronger knife. And right where that bone flares out, it's a little bit softer right there, so you can usually get a nice clean cut. So we take that part off, and that can just go in the stock. Okay. So this is your airline breast, and then you would saute and cook it like this, and you can try to clean off just a little bit more of that if you can get the rest of it off. That's kind of a presentation technique. That's kind of a classic kind of French presentation technique. The thing that this shows is that you have good knife skills. So in your restaurant, I have a little piece of cartilage still on here. Take that off. So in your restaurant, if you took that, sauteed that, somebody knows that you had a fresh chicken that you deboned, and you took the time and the care. You left the skin on, so it's going to be nice and moist underneath. Okay. We'll do that same thing to this other one, so you can see it one more time. Right there at that second joint. Okay. Split it. Take off the little wing tip here, because there's not much meat in there anyway. It'll be better in the stock. Cut down to the bone. Okay, and then begin the scraping process. Get a little piece of it right there. Using the back of your knife, go around. Don't be afraid to flip it over if you want to get underneath it really well. Get it all the way out to the flare of that bone, right till it flares out. Because that's where it's going to be the easiest to cut. If I try to cut it right here, I can, but odds are it's going to splinter. And so we don't really want that. We want to have a pretty decent kind of clean cut through it. So again, take my chef's knife, get to that soft spot. Just rock back and forth till you feel it slide all the way through. Trying to get the rest of that little, there we go. So there's our second airline breast. Okay, so we have two of those now. Get rid of that little bit of liver. Now the thighs and legs. So what we're going to do with these, now normally you could just separate this and then you got bone and thigh, bone and leg, do something with it. But because what we're going to do with it, we're going to actually use that dark meat in something, in some preparation, whether it's in our soup or chicken stew or chicken and dumplings or whatever it is. So we want to debone this. Now, the best way to do it is to flip it over upside down. You already know where the end of that thigh bone is, and so we're going to take that, we're going to just make a slice just like this, kind of follow along the bone and start to spread that out. Hopefully the idea here is if you can do this well, you can keep all that meat in one piece and just remove the bone. So I got that kind of exposed. You can see that right there. I don't need to scrape it down. I'm just trying to see where that bone right is. And now I'm going to do the same thing here along the leg. Exposing that bone. So you can see here's this bone, here's this bone. The only other thing that's in this lower leg part, there's a big piece of like tendon. Kind of like you have two bones in your lower leg, the tibia and the fibula. Because the chicken is such a smaller animal, it has one, but it also has like one like almost like a bone, but it's really more of a tendon. So you'll see that in just a minute. Now we've got the knuckle, which would be kind of like your kneecap. We're going to clean that out just to kind of release the meat from it, because our goal here is to get this bone out and leave the rest of this meat intact. Okay. So if you look here, and if you can see this lower part of the leg, there's not much meat down there. We're not really concerned with that. So all I'm going to do is take this, I'm going to lift this up, I'm going to slide my knife underneath, there's a little tendon there, I'll show it to you later, right like that, and I'm just going to cut away just like that, see? And then I'm going to follow that towards where that kneecap kind of joint is. Okay, so you see that? That's the lower leg exposed. All I've got left now is the thigh. So I can just take this, same thing, underneath it, cut through. If I leave a little bit of that cartilage, all I do is just take my knife and go back and just remove it, throw it in my stock. It's good for the stock. And again, I'm just cleaning it away now. Okay? There's your exposed bone. Now that little tendon part I was talking about, if I can pull it out of here, I'll show you. It's right against this bone. It's this right here. So when you feel that, you want to remove that, because see, it's almost like a sharp little bone that sits against this. You won't want to leave that in here. Okay, and then you can split this in half again, because you're trying to get some smaller pieces for your stock. Okay, now if I flip this over, the idea here is I kept this in roughly one nice piece. See, like it didn't look like that because we're looking at it from underneath. There's all that meat. So this, you can leave the skin on, and you can grill it, or you can simmer it or whatever, or we can use it in our chicken soup or chicken and dumplings. We're going to set that aside right there. We're going to do the same thing to this one. Okay, find the thigh, clean that bone out a little bit, locate the joint, and always turn it. If you need to turn it, turn it. Don't get in an awkward position. Okay. And then clean this just like you did the first one. Just follow that leg bone right down to what would be like the ankle or the feet if it was on here. Exposing that, okay? Start to clean out that kneecap area just a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay. It's a funny thing, the health occupations classes sometimes use chickens so that they can kind of clean things out and so they can see how joints and stuff work, because it's very similar. I mean, most animals are very similar. I mean, if it's a different shape and stuff like that, but they still have a lower leg and a kneecap and cartilage and all that stuff. So right underneath here, again, on the other side of that tendon, and I'm just going to clean that out. Okay, remembering there's not much meat right here, so I'm not really concerned about that. Same thing underneath the thigh. Okay, make sure if I leave cartilage, I check for that. And then I'm just cleaning out that joint, trying not to leave too much of the meat behind. Okay, so there's that. There's that. We split this. These bones go in the stock. So here's what we have. We have our boneless thigh meat right here. Okay, we have our 2 airline breasts. We have our 2 chicken tenders, and we have 2 chicken wings. So this chicken was like $5. Okay, you see, like, we ended up with a lot of meat. Like, these 2 are entree-sized portions that we could sell for, $9.99, $10.99, depending on what else you put with them or something like that. This can go into soup or chicken fajitas or chicken stew or chicken salad or something like that. These can become part of a kid's meal, chicken tenders or something like that, if you're cleaning chickens all the time. Okay, and then of course you save your wings, because your wings can be nice appetizers. Okay, so that's